Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is. Hype me up on YouTube so my videos can be recommended. Thanks. I started calling the police on my neighbors for domestic violence. Now I'm the one who looks crazy, and they planned it that way from the beginning. My name is Lisa Chen. I'm 29, a marketing analyst, and I live alone in a mid-rise apartment building in downtown Portland. I've always been the responsible type, paid my rent on time, kept to myself, never caused problems. I moved into apartment 6D about 8 months ago, right after my promotion. The building was nice, the neighborhood was safe, and my neighbors in 6C seemed perfect. Ryan and Michelle Torres, early 30s, attractive, the kind of couple you'd see in a Pottery Barn catalog. Ryan worked in finance, always wore expensive suits. Michelle was a therapist, with one of those calm, soothing voices that made you feel instantly comfortable. We'd chat in the elevator sometimes. Small talk about weather, weekend plans, the building's terrible water pressure. They seemed so normal, so nice. For the first 2 months, everything was quiet. I'd hear them occasionally through our shared wall, muffled TV sounds, soft music, normal apartment noise. I'd wave when I saw them in the hallway. Michelle even recommended a great Thai place nearby. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have good neighbors. In apartment living, that's everything. I worked long hours, usually getting home around 7. I'd make dinner, watch Netflix, fall asleep by 11. My life was predictable, maybe boring, but it was mine, and I liked it that way. It started on a Tuesday night in late September. I remember because I'd just gotten into bed, was reading on my phone when I heard it. Screaming. Not movie screaming or TV drama screaming, real screaming. A woman's voice, shrill with terror, coming from 6C. Please, please stop. You're hurting me. I sat up, heart pounding. Then came the crash, something heavy hitting the wall we shared. My wall shook. A man's voice, low and venomous. You think you can embarrass me like that in front of my colleagues? More crashing. Michelle sobbing. I'm sorry, please. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called 911. There's a domestic violence situation. Apartment 6C. I can hear someone being hurt. Please send someone now. The operator asked me questions. My name, my address, what exactly I was hearing. The whole time, the screaming continued. I could hear Michelle begging, Ryan's voice getting louder, more furniture breaking. Officers are on the way, ma'am. Stay in your apartment. I pressed my ear to the wall, feeling helpless. The sounds were horrifying. Thuds, crashes, Michelle's desperate pleas. How long did it take for police to arrive? 5 minutes? 10? It felt like hours. Finally, silence. Then footsteps in the hallway, knocking on 6C's door. I cracked my door open to watch. 2 officers stood in the hallway. Ryan answered, looking confused and concerned. He was wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, hair slightly messy like he'd been sleeping. Officers, is something wrong? We got a call about a domestic disturbance. A disturbance? From us? Michelle appeared behind him, wearing yoga pants and a tank top. No marks on her face, no tears. She looked perfectly fine. A fight? Michelle said, sounding genuinely baffled. Oh my God, no. We were watching a movie.
I stepped into the hallway. I heard you screaming. I heard furniture breaking. It was real. Michelle looked at me with what seemed like genuine concern. Lisa, right? From 6D? She smiled apologetically. I'm so sorry if we disturbed you. We were watching this intense thriller, the new one with Jessica Chastain. I guess we had the volume up too high. I didn't realize how loud it was. Ryan nodded. Yeah, the sound system is pretty powerful. We'll definitely keep it down. Really sorry about that. The officers looked at me. One of them, older, with a gray mustache, had an expression I couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe? Or annoyance. "Ma'am, did you actually see anything?" he asked. "No, but I heard—" "The movie," Michelle interjected softly. "I totally understand why you'd be concerned. The actress screams a lot in it. It's actually pretty disturbing. We probably shouldn't watch stuff like that so late." They invited the officers inside. Invited me, too. I followed, feeling disoriented. Their apartment was serene. Soft jazz playing from a speaker, 2 glasses of wine on the kitchen counter, still half full. The living room was immaculate. No broken furniture, no signs of a struggle. The TV was paused on a streaming service menu. "See?" Ryan pulled up the movie. He pressed play. A woman's scream filled the room, the exact same scream I'd heard, the same desperate pleading. My stomach dropped. "We've been binge-watching it this week," Michelle explained. "We had subtitles on because the dialogue is hard to follow, but I guess the action scenes were too loud. Again, we're really sorry." The officers exchanged glances. The older one turned to me. "Sounds like a misunderstanding, ma'am. Folks, just keep the volume down, okay?" After they left, I stood in my apartment, staring at the wall. Had I been wrong? The screams had sounded so real, but the movie audio was identical. Maybe I had overreacted. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Something felt off, but I couldn't articulate what. It happened again 3 nights later, 1:47 a.m. I know because I checked my phone when the screaming started. Same sounds, same crashes, same desperate begging from Michelle. This time I didn't call the police immediately. I grabbed my phone and started recording audio. My hands shook as I held it against the wall, capturing every sound. When silence fell, I played it back, crystal clear. Michelle screaming, "Please stop, you're going to kill me." Crashes, Ryan's voice, "You're nothing without me, nothing." I had evidence now. I called the police again. Different officers arrived this time, a young woman and a middle-aged man. Same result. Ryan and Michelle looking confused and worried. The TV paused on the same movie. "We're really concerned about Lisa," Michelle said, and her therapist voice was in full effect, calm, professional, tinged with worry. "She called the police on us 3 nights ago for the same thing. We've tried to be understanding, but honestly, we're getting frightened. She pounds on our door at odd hours, accusing us of things that aren't happening." "I have a recording," I insisted, fumbling with my phone. I played it. The audio was clear. Screaming, crashing, threats. Ryan pulled up the movie again. The same audio played from his TV, perfectly synchronized with my recording. The same screams, the same words, identical. "This is the movie," he said patiently. "This is what she's been recording through the wall." The female officer looked at me with poorly concealed pity. "Ma'am, it sounds like the TV audio." "But she'd been watching with subtitles and noise-canceling headphones since the first complaint. We had no idea the sound was still carrying through the walls somehow. Our building's older. Maybe the soundproofing isn't great." After the officers left, with clear skepticism directed at me, I sat alone in my apartment, doubting everything. The recording sounded exactly like the movie. Exactly. How was that possible unless it actually was the movie? My phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., unknown number. "Great performance tonight, neighbor. Act 2 tomorrow, same time. Try calling the cops again. Let's see how many times they'll come before they start thinking you're the problem. Sleep well. M/R." My blood turned to ice. I blocked the number immediately, hands shaking. This was intentional. They were doing this to me, on purpose. But why? I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The text message played in my mind on loop. They were performing for me, creating sounds of violence that were just realistic enough to terrify me, just ambiguous enough to be dismissed as TV. The fights continued. Not every night, that would be too predictable, but 2 or 3 times a week, always between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., always the same pattern, exhaling argument, Michelle's screams, crashes, then silence. I stopped calling the police. What was the point? But I started documenting everything. I bought a better recording device. I took notes, dates, times, exact phrases I heard. Then they started texting from different numbers. Recording again? That's cute. The cops won't come forever, Lisa. Eventually, they'll stop responding to the crazy lady's calls. We're just getting started. I blocked each number. They'd text from a new one within hours.
I tried to be strategic. I invited my coworker Sarah over one Friday night, thinking if someone else heard it, I'd have a witness. We were watching a movie in my living room when it started. 2:14 a.m. Michelle screams, furniture crashing, Ryan's threatening voice. "Oh my God," I said, jumping up. "Do you hear that?" Sarah looked confused. "Hear what?" "The screaming from next door." She tilted her head, listening. The sounds were clear to me, Michelle sobbing, begging for it to stop. But Sarah just shook her head. "I don't hear anything. Are you okay?" The moment she said it, the sounds stopped. Complete silence. Sarah left 20 minutes later, clearly uncomfortable. She stopped responding to my text after that. That's when I understood how sophisticated this was. They were creating sounds that somehow only I could hear clearly. Maybe the frequency, maybe the specific way sound traveled through our shared wall. I don't know, but they'd figured out how to torture me in a way that was invisible to everyone else. I started researching acoustic weapons, directional speakers, sonic harassment. I found forums full of people describing similar situations, neighbors using technology to create sounds only they could hear. But these forums also had people claiming aliens were beaming messages into their teeth. I sounded insane even to myself. My work performance collapsed. I'd be in meetings, exhausted and jumpy, unable to focus. My boss pulled me aside. "Lisa, is everything okay? You seem distracted lately." How could I explain? My neighbors are psychologically torturing me with fake domestic violence sounds? Felt like something a paranoid schizophrenic would say. The texts continued from rotating numbers. "You look tired, Lisa. Not sleeping well? Saw you talking to your boss today. Worried about your job? You should be. We can keep this up forever. Can you?" Then Ryan and Michelle went on the offensive. They started filing complaints about me. They told the building manager I was harassing them, knocking on their door at all hours, making unfounded accusations, stalking them in the hallway. The building manager, Patricia, called me into her office. She was sympathetic but firm. "Lisa, I've known Ryan and Michelle for 3 years. They're model tenants, but I've received very concerning reports about your behavior toward them." "They're gaslighting me," I said, and even as the words left my mouth, I knew how it sounded. "They're creating fake sounds of violence to make me call the police, then making me look crazy when the police arrived. They're doing it intentionally." Patricia's expression shifted, that subtle change when someone decides you're unstable. "Have you been under a lot of stress lately? Maybe work pressure?" I never thought I'd lose my mind over something as simple as time, until it started disappearing on me. My name's Eric Miller, and I was a senior at Riverside University, studying electrical engineering. I wasn't just any student. I had a perfect 4.0 GPA, Dean's List every semester, and I was this close to landing a full-ride scholarship for my master's program. Everything depended on my final exams. One mistake, one missed test, and it would all crumble. That's why I moved out of the chaotic dorm and into a quiet studio apartment off campus. It was small, cheap, and most importantly, silent. No roommates blasting music at 2 a.m. No distractions. Just me, my textbooks, and a future I could taste. The first week was perfect. I had my routine down to the minute. Wake up at 6 a.m., study until noon, break for lunch, then back to the grind. I set alarms on my phone, used my wall clock to track time, and marked every exam date in red on my desk calendar. But then, things started feeling off. It was subtle at first. I'd glance at my phone and see 8:15 a.m., then look at my wall clock and it said 8:40. I figured the clock battery was dying, so I replaced it. Problem solved. Or so I thought. 2 days later, I woke up in a panic. My phone alarm never went off. When I checked the time, it read 9:47 a.m. I had missed my morning study block. And worse, I could have sworn I set 3 alarms the night before. I checked. They were all turned off. Every single one.
I told myself I must have swiped them away in my sleep. Then my calendar started lying to me. I had written thermodynamics exam October 10th in thick red marker, but when I checked it 3 days later, the ink looked smudged, like someone had erased it and rewritten it. Now it said October 9th. I stared at it, heart pounding. That exam was tomorrow. I had lost an entire day somewhere, and I had no idea how. I barely slept that night. I made it to the thermodynamics exam by some miracle, but I was rattled. My hands shook as I filled in answers I wasn't sure about. When I left the hall, I felt sick. That's when things got worse. I started setting my phone across the room so I'd have to get up to turn off alarms. I triple-checked my calendar every night before bed. I even bought a new digital clock and placed it right next to my laptop. I was taking control. But time kept slipping. One morning, I woke up and my phone said 11:23 a.m. Impossible. I had set 5 alarms starting at 6. I grabbed my phone, checked the alarm app. Every single one was deleted. Not turned off. Deleted. My stomach dropped. I looked at the wall clock. It was spinning. Not ticking. Spinning. The hands whirred around the face like a broken toy, faster and faster, until they finally stopped at 11:23. I ripped the batteries out and threw it in the trash. That afternoon, I went to my advisor's office to confirm my exam schedule. She pulled up my file and frowned. "Eric, you missed your circuits exam this morning." "What? No, that's on Friday." She turned her monitor toward me. There it was, clear as day. Circuits exam, Wednesday, October 12th, 9 a.m. Today was Wednesday. I wrote it down as Friday, I swear I did. She gave me a sympathetic look. "Are you okay? You seem stressed. Maybe you should talk to someone." I left her office in a daze. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I had written, but when I got home and checked my calendar, it said Wednesday. The ink looked fresh. Someone was doing this to me. That night, I stayed awake. I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, my calendar, my new clock, watching, waiting. At 3:17 a.m., I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, my phone screen read 6:45 a.m. 3.5 hours. Gone. I hadn't moved, hadn't slept. I started screaming. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore. I was unraveling, doubting every memory, every moment. But before I left, my neighbor, Mr. Holloway, knocked on my door. He was an older man, maybe mid-60s, always polite. He smiled when I opened the door, but his eyes were cold. "Heard you screaming last night, Eric. Everything all right?" I stared at him, exhausted, paranoid. "Yeah, just stressed." He nodded slowly. Time can be tricky when you're under pressure. Easy to lose track of things. He paused, his smile widening just slightly. "You should get some rest. Don't want to miss anything important." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I packed my bags that same hour and drove home to my parents' house 3 hours away. I told them I needed a break, that I was burning out. They were worried, but they didn't ask too many questions. I tried to reset. I used their clocks, their calendar. I made it to my remaining exams on time, barely. I passed them all. My GPA held steady. But when the scholarship results came out, I wasn't on the list. I called the committee, confused, desperate. They told me I had missed 2 major exams, thermodynamics and circuits. Automatic disqualification. "But I took thermodynamics. I was there." "Our records show you weren't, Mr. Miller. I'm sorry." I hung up and sat in silence, staring at nothing. 4 years of perfect grades, countless sleepless nights, a future I had built with my own hands, gone. I didn't fail, I didn't give up. Someone, something stole it from me. I never went back to that apartment. I later heard Mr. Holloway moved out a week after I left. No forwarding address. The landlord said he'd been there for years, but had no lease on file. No records. I graduated, got a decent job, but I never chased that master's degree. Even now, years later, I still check my phone twice. I write everything in pen, then take a picture. And sometimes, late at night, I still wonder, did I really lose time? Or did time lose me? I kept wondering till this day.
We moved to Maple Drive to escape the whispers. 3 miscarriages in 2 years, and our old neighborhood had become a minefield of baby showers, gender reveals, and those horrible, pitying looks from women pushing strollers. My wife Sarah stopped leaving the house. I'd find her crying in the nursery we'd painted yellow twice, staring at the empty crib we couldn't bring ourselves to disassemble. The house on Maple Drive was perfect. Quiet street, older neighbors who kept to themselves, no children's laughter echoing through thin walls. Just peace. That's what we needed. Peace to heal, to try again without an audience counting our failures. David Chen introduced himself the day we moved in. Nice guy, early 40s, living in the blue colonial directly across from us. He helped me carry boxes, made small talk about the neighborhood. Normal stuff. His house looked decent, a little dated but well-maintained. Then one evening about 3 weeks in, I was grilling on our back deck when David appeared at our fence. "Your house looks amazing," he said, studying our gray siding with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Really amazing. What's that paint color called?" Coastal Fog, I think?" He wrote it down in a little notebook. "And those shutters, custom?" "Just from Home Depot." 2 weeks later, his house was gray, exact same shade. Sarah noticed it first. "That's weird, right?" she said, peeking through our kitchen curtains. "Why would he paint it the exact same color?" I shrugged it off. Maybe he just liked it. Imitation is flattery or whatever. But then came the shutters. Same black, same style. Then the mailbox. We'd replaced ours with a nice bronze one. His appeared identical 3 days later. The landscaping. We planted hydrangeas along our walkway. Within a week, David had hydrangeas in the exact same configuration. Sarah started keeping a list. Doormat Tuesday, porch light Friday, window boxes Monday. Her voice got quieter each time. "Clay, he's copying everything. Everything." I said, "He's just got similar taste," but I didn't believe it anymore. That's when things got truly strange.
I came home from work to find Sarah standing in our driveway, pale and shaking. David's driveway, directly across from ours, now had the same car. Not the same model, the exact same car. Silver Honda CR-V, same year, even the same small dent on the rear bumper that Sarah had gotten at Target 2 months ago. "Clay, where did he even find—" Her hands were trembling. I marched across the street and rang his doorbell. David answered with that same friendly smile, wearing a blue polo shirt, the exact blue polo I'd worn to work that morning. "Hey neighbor, what's up?" "What the hell is going on?" I gestured at his car. "Why are you copying us?" His smile never wavered. "Copying? I'm just making improvements. You guys have great taste." He leaned against his doorframe, completely relaxed. "Your wife seemed upset when I talked to her at Kroger yesterday. I introduced myself, said hi to Sarah, but she acted like she didn't know me." "You know her name?" "Of course, we're neighbors." "What did you say your name was when you introduced yourself?" He looked confused. David Morrison, same as you." My blood went cold. "My last name is Morrison. What's your last name?" "Morrison." He pulled out his wallet, showed me my driver's license. David Clay Morrison. My exact name. Changed it legally 6 months ago. Thought it had a nice ring to it. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. "You should come inside sometime," he continued casually. "My wife would love to meet you both. She's usually shy, but I think you'd find her familiar." That night I pulled county records. He'd legally changed his name 8 months ago, 2 months before we even moved to Maple Drive. He'd bought his house 11 months ago. He'd planned this. Sarah found the photographs 3 days later, in our mailbox. No envelope, just photos. Pictures of David's wife. She looked exactly like Sarah, but younger. Sarah from our wedding. Sarah from 15 years ago.
I hired a private investigator. What he found made me want to burn our house down and run. David had been following us for 2 years. Pictures of Sarah at her yoga class from our old neighborhood. Pictures of me at work. Pictures of our miscarriages. Hospital parking lot timestamps matching each loss. He'd been there, watching our grief. But it was worse than stalking. The investigator found David's storage unit. Inside, journals. Hundreds of pages cataloging our life from 15 years ago. Our honeymoon hotel, the restaurant where I proposed, Sarah's college graduation dress. Things he couldn't possibly know, except the journals were written in my handwriting. Perfect forgeries of entries I'd never written. "He's not copying your present," the investigator said quietly. "He's reconstructing your past, and he's moving forward through it." That's when I understood. David's wife wasn't just styled like young Sarah. She'd had plastic surgery. Extensive work. The investigator found the medical records. She'd been transformed over 18 months to match Sarah's face from 2010. I checked our trash. David had been taking it every week. He had our DNA, our receipts, our discarded mail. He knew everything. The final entry in his journal, dated next month. First positive pregnancy test. Finally, just like Clay and Sarah, November 2011. We never had a positive test in 2011. We didn't start trying until 2018. But David was creating the life I should have had. The timeline where we succeeded, where Sarah stayed young and hopeful, where we had the child that never came. He was living my life better than I had. Last week, Sarah stopped coming to bed. I found her in the nursery again, but this time she was looking out the window at David's house, at the light in what I knew was their nursery. "He's 15 years behind us," she whispered. "In his timeline, they're about to have their first baby." She started crying, and I realized with horror that she wasn't crying from fear. She was crying from envy. This morning, I saw Sarah crossing the street toward David's house. She hasn't come back.
We fled to Vancouver 3 days later, left everything, furniture, photos, the yellow nursery. Sometimes Sarah wakes up screaming, checking her reflection, measuring how much she's aged. We never talk about Maple Drive, but late at night, we both wonder the same thing. Has he found us yet? A little advice. If someone in your life starts mirroring you obsessively, your choices, your appearance, your routines, don't ignore it. Document everything. Tell people. Get authorities involved early. Obsession doesn't stay still. It escalates. And sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one who hates you. It's the one who wants to become you. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Now, sleepy souls, if you made it this far, you're officially part of the story now. Hit that subscribe button if you want more psychological horror that'll keep you up at night. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have stayed and confronted David, or would you have run like Clay and Sarah? And if you've ever had a neighbor who gave you seriously creepy vibes, share that story below. I read every single one. Stay safe out there. And maybe check your neighbor's house one more time before you sleep tonight.